so it looks like we're getting a new Marvel Legends Gorr the God Butcher action figure. But is this one any good, soulmates, and is he worth your money? Be sure you stick around until the end, guys, because we're going to talk about what Thor characters we want to see next. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. Gorr the God Butcher is a relatively new character in the Marvel Comics canon. He debuted back in 2013 in a Thor comic book, and we saw him pretty recently in Thor Love and Thunder, played by Christian Bale, although it was very much a butchered version of Gorr because he looked absolutely nothing like his comic book counterpart. Gorr is a very cool and unique character because he belongs to this alien species that believes blindly in the gods, but as soon as he learns that gods are real and they don't help anyone, he vows to go after them all. And not too long after that, he acquires the Necrosword and goes after Thor, the God of Thunder. There haven't really been any Gorr action figures up until recently, when we saw him represented in the Thor Love and Thunder wave based on the MCU movie, where we saw the Christian Bale version of Gorr as a Marvel Legend. And besides that, we've seen him as a Funko Pop, but the comic book version of Gorr we really haven't seen yet, and in my opinion we still haven't seen him because this new Gorr Marvel Legend is not it. Let's start out with the positive things on this toy. I think that the head sculpts on him look really cool, like the one where he's got his hood off and he has his head tails hanging out and he looks all angry like he really wants to go after Thor. Yeah, that head sculpt is pretty top notch. And then the one where he has his hood up and he has a very stern look on his face, that's another perfect head sculpt. You gotta hand it to Marvel Legends. The head sculpt on them is almost always S tier. Another thing I like about Gorr is the symbiote robe that he has, because you've got the robes kind of just dangling off in the front, and then in the back you can see them swirling and sort of looking like they're alive, and it's all kind of creepy looking. It's very nicely done. And what's also nicely done is the Necro Blade. Oh boy, that is a really nice piece on this action figure. The detail on the sword is absolutely astounding. He's even got the little tendrils of the symbiote dripping over his hands, and it looks like the sword is kind of just spilling ooze all over. Unfortunately, that's about where all the good stuff ends on Gorr, because the rest of this action figure is a total mess. And the first thing I noticed, as well as a lot of the viewers here noticed, is that the hands and feet on Gorr are completely wrong. Let's start at the feet. Gorr has recurved legs, sort of, and it's mostly on his feet. Like, he looks like he kind of has normal-ish human legs, but then you get down to his feet and they look like what you would see on a dog or a cat or something. That is not present on Gorr here. He looks very flat-footed. It looks like they just kind of iron out his actual feet, and it's so egregious that I can't believe this was okay to be put up for sale. It's really embarrassing to look at knowing that. The other thing that I immediately noticed was wrong on Gorr are his hands, because they kind of just depicted him here with normal-ish human hands, human-looking hands, and that's not right either, because Gorr doesn't really have normal human-looking hands. He has hands that have like 3 fingers on them, and he has his thumb, and then he's got a little pinky on the side that is very small by comparison, but it doesn't look like a human hand. It looks very different from that, and obviously this is nothing like that. And they even made the hand holding the Necrosword a human-esque hand, and they just went out of their way to avoid making it comic book accurate here. It's like, if you can't make him look accurate to what he looks like in the comics, it is better to just not do it than do it like this. Because a good action figure is more than a couple of nice head sculpts and some articulation. A good action figure is the sum of its parts, body included. Speaking of the body, I mean, the paint job on this one is about what you would expect from a comic book based Marvel Legends action figure. They just painted a lot of his symbiote on, but the thing about a symbiote is that when it's attached to someone like this, there's a three-dimensional element that should be present because it's very obviously crawling all over his body, right? And those parts should be sculpted on to indicate that, yeah, he's got a symbiote on him, and yeah, it's alive. And aside from the paint applications on Gorr's body, the articulation looks very dated too. It looks like another action figure that was ripped from back in 2015 or something. He's got pinned joints on his elbows and his knees. He's got a waist swivel. He's got the boot cut at his calf. This thing looks so dated and so out of place on him. They really needed to use something more modern for Gorr, or just make an entirely new body if they had to, especially considering that they should have sculpted on the symbiote parts to begin with. And really, I think it would have been warranted after Gorr just appeared in an MCU movie and people are curious about who he is. Like, you find out that Gorr is actually a really cool character, and then you go look for a toy of him and you find his Marvel Legend here, and it looks really mid. On the topic of the pin joints, there was a whole big thing on social media where people were looking at Gorr's picture on his box and noticing that that did not have pin joints. They had pinless joints. And people were wondering if maybe the actual toy is going to have pinless joints, and then it was confirmed, no. The picture on the box is just a digital render, and the toy that you're actually going to get is the one that's pictured here with the pinned joints. And now, because of that, this makes one think. Why are they using a digital render on the box? Why aren't they just using a picture from the photography session of the action figure that's actually in there? It takes all of about 5 minutes in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever program they're using to design the artwork for the box. It's lazy and embarrassing that they couldn't even bother to do that, but also, what does it say about Marvel Legends action figures going forward, knowing that we can't trust the artwork on the box? How are people going to feel if they're not in the know and they buy an action figure with one thing pictured on the box and open it and get another? Now, you and I might be aware because we're on social media, we're always looking at these action figures and we know what we're getting. But then average Joe decides to get a Marvel Legend, he gets the box and finds, oh, this is not exactly what I was expecting. If the inaccuracies and the reuse and the lazy box art were not enough, this costs $30. And $30 is too much for a Marvel Legend, especially one like this, where you're really not getting much of anything. You're getting an extra head, and you're getting a Necrosword accessory, and that's about it. For $30, you really have to sweeten the package on a Marvel Legend, because at $30, you are $10 more than your closest competitor, and DC Multiverse is offering already a comparable number of accessories most of the time, and if they don't have a comparable number of accessories, they almost always have a fresh new sculpt and not just reuse after reuse. But if you're looking at that $30 price range, you also have to consider what Marvel Select has to offer, because those are $30 across the board, and you get some very large action figures and some with a lot of accessories for just $30. Is this worth as much as a Marvel Select? No, it's really not. $30 is too much, and they're really pricing themselves out of the quote-unquote affordable collectible category. Is this one worth your money, soulmates? I mean, I don't think so. I think that you can do a lot better for $30, but ultimately you have to decide whether it's worth it to you. If you're a Thor or Gorr the God Butcher fan and you absolutely have to have an action figure of him right now, this is pretty much the only game in town, so this might be it if you have to have him. But who knows, if you're okay with a $30 price tag and you happen to like the way this one looks, maybe you can find some enjoyment out of it. Am I gonna get this one? Well, obviously I'm not all that interested because of the things that I mentioned, but if you guys would like to see a review of it, I will still review it if you want to see it. And if you do, be sure you share this video with your friends, and we'll see what happens, guys. Now that we've seen this Gorr the God Butcher action figure, what Thor character do we want to see next? Well, I would love to see a Beta Ray Bill, guys. We haven't really seen one since the original Toy Biz release. Not a classic one. We have seen a Beta Ray Bill release, but it wasn't the classic one that we know and love. Well, soulmates, what do you think of this Gorr the God Butcher action figure? Do you like this one, and do you want it for your collection? Are you on the fence because of the price or maybe the quality of it? Or are you really not that interested because of inaccuracies or whatever reasons? I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and be sure you tell me what Thor character you want to see next. If you want to learn more about the last Amazon exclusive, the Spider-Man 5-pack, you can check out that video here, soulmates.